Welcome to the party. I'm not here right now, but I want you to listen very carefully. These guys are very funny, so pay attention. Enough talk. It's showtime.
Hello and welcome to Bags of Action. My name's Steve, my co-host is Pete.
Hello.
This episode we are talking about the 1990 film Total Recall starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. And somehow, given our love of the 90s and Arnie films, I don't know how we haven't covered it already.
No, I'm amazed we haven't covered this, and I'm amazed we haven't covered The Running Man. Considering we love action and sci-fi, I'm very surprised that neither of those have made an appearance. But now we rectify at least one of those with with this Philip K. Dick short story inspired feature.
Yes. Now, I haven't actually read the story, which is called We Can Remember It For You Wholesale.
It tends to be he has nice long titles that they can turn into much shorter titles for films. That seems to be the Philip K. Dick approach.
It's true. And it was published in the 1960s. I mean, there were a few science fiction writers from that period, 60s, 70s and early 80s, I would say, that their stories are still being retold over and over again, because before we had any idea about the technology or the possibility, they created things that people said, oh, it's ridiculous. And then years and decades later, they came into being.
Well, there's a lot of Zoom calls in this film.
Yeah. Yeah. But, you know, you go back to like Fahrenheit 451 and they talk about interactive TV. And they talk about an answering machine. There's no such thing as an answering machine. And he basically created it in the story, and then years later it became a real thing. So there's just things like that. They were so clever. They could just see possibilities, and some of it came into being, which is amazing.
Yeah, and this is directed by Paul Verhoeven, who tends to be good in this kind of space. It's like slightly satirical, social commentary kind of sci-fi. So RoboCop, he did prior to this. Yep. And then Starship Troopers he did later than this. Actually, the writers of this are quite interesting. So I was looking on the old IMDb, and it's always interesting to work out who did what, because you get there's two people that get full credits. One who gets a story credit only, one who gets a screenplay credit only, right? Which is usually depending on how much input they had. But there's four people. The track record is unbelievable, really. So one of the main writers is Ronald Shusett, who wrote Nico, Above the Law, probably the best Steven Seagal film, and also co-wrote Alien.
Oh, wow.
Dan O'Bannon, who wrote Dark Star, co-wrote Alien, and wrote Blue Thunder. And then you've got a story credit for John Pavel, who's wrote Star Trek Next Generation episodes and also Sliders.
Yeah.
And then another screenplay credit for Gary Goldman, who wrote Big Trouble in Little China, Navy SEALs, and the Nicolas Cage film Next, which probably best not to talk too much about.
Okay.
Although not as bad as Jiu-Jitsu looks, which is his next foray.
Let's not go there.
Let's not go there.
So, the cast on this film, let's go through some of the names. So, Arnold Schwarzenegger, obviously. You got Rachel Ticotin as Melina, Sharon Stone as Laurie, Ronnie Cox, who loved him ever since Beverly Hills Cop, and RoboCop, of course, he was in. Yeah. I've seen him in so many things. Most recently, only a few years ago now, I even saw him in Dexter. Michael Ironside, of course, as Richter in this. Mel Johnson Jr., who plays Benny.
Who was in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, I believe, and also was recently in Jessica Jones.
Yes, that's right. And then there's some interesting names as we go down the list. So there's the guy who plays the Doctor, who's always Roy Brocksmith.
Yeah.
I love him. He's got a very particular voice, a very particular way of talking, and he always plays slightly arsey, annoyed, kind of middle management people. It's brilliant.
It's like this film is just, I'd forgotten this, is how many good character actors fill out the cast. And we've said it before, you get a big star, you get an action hero, and sometimes they just put, whoever around him. But in this, I think it's a really, really strong cast from top to bottom. You got Michael Champion, who was in Beverly Hills Cop as well. Yep. Woman Out in Toy Soldiers. Marshall Bell, who goes on to be in Starship Troopers. two of my favourite 90s films, which we never covered, which is The Chase and Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead. He's in both of those.
Denver's fantastic. I love that one. I haven't seen The Chase, I don't think.
Oh, The Chase is... Yeah, we should talk about that another time. It's a slightly tongue-in-cheek thing with... what's his name? Charlie Sheen and Henry Rollins. But it's good. And then there's three people that I remembered more from TV than from movies.
Right.
So one of which is Robert Costanzo, who plays his work colleague. Is it Harry?
I think so, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's from Die Hard 2, but he was also Joey's dad in Friends.
Yes. Mr. Tribbiani Sr. Yes.
And then you've got Dean Norris, who plays Hank Schrader in Breaking Bad. But here he plays Tony, who's the guy, the kind of the disfigured mutant guy who does the whole, you got a lot of nerve showing your face around here. Look who's talking line. He's in it. And then another person who's got a link to Michael Ironside is Mickey Jones, who was Chris Farmer in V, who was his kind of best friend in V, and actually his best friend in real life, I believe. He pops up in a very small role on the subway in Mars as well, the kind of biker-looking guy.
Right, so Dean Norris was also in Starship Troopers with Michael Ironside, directed by Paul Verhoeven.
He's obviously, and so there's three people from this that went on to be in that. He must have his kind of people he likes
to work with.
Yeah.
So there's two Star Trek connections on this film.
Okay.
So Mark Alamo plays Everett in this thing. He was the kind of officer with the beret that when they get to Mars, he's one of the sort of people in charge. And he's in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and a very, very big role in that show. He played Gul Dukat. He's in 40 episodes or something, so it's a very big thing. The other connection is a lot more tenuous, but the voice of Johnny Cab is Robert Picardo, who went on to play the Doctor in Star Trek Voyager for 7 seasons, and is quite a recognizable chap if you'd seen him.
Wow, okay.
So there's as you say, they put people in some films and the rest of the cast is amazing. The one person who I thought was missing, though, you know who I'm going to say?
Sven Ole Thornton.
Yeah.
He was the trainer, though. He was Arnie's trainer on this film.
There you go, because there's a cracking fight, and I thought, 4 big guys, I thought, none of them was Sven.
No, but one of those big guys is another one of Arnie's crew, who was also in Hard Target with Sven Ole Thorsen. So in Hard Target, you've got the hunting guys that are all much too big to be these there, and it's one of them. I recognised him as well. So yeah, it's kind of, that's the thing in this kind of late 80s, early 90s period. You spend almost like spot the cast member, kind of through it. So had you seen this many times before, or?
It's one of those things that if it comes on the television, and even if it's halfway through, I'll probably just sit and watch it or watch a bit of it because I love it. So I think I've seen it about a dozen times, but I haven't seen it in at least 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, it's a long time since I've seen it. This is one probably hopefully going to get into trouble. Back in the day when I had a friend who had Sky movies and we didn't have Sky movies, they would make VHS tapes of the films sometimes. I think I had this on the same tape because it was done high-speed dub, whatever thing, a fast-track thing where you could fit twice as much on a tape,
Yeah.
On a 4-hour tape. You could get 8 hours on it. It was amazing. And it was this, and I think it was Nightmare on Elm Street 3 or 4, Dream Warriors, was on the same tape. And because they were the only films I had, I watched them a lot. So I was quoting lines watching this because I've seen this film. Like when I was a late teens, I watched this an awful lot of times. But I'd forgotten how kind of taut it is. It's like there's an awful lot of story, but it moves at one hell of a pace. Like,
oh yeah,
he's kind of, there's action from there's the dream, and then there's kind of once he kind of there's action pretty much from like the first 5 minutes until the end of this film. It doesn't really stop. A lot of it's kind of running around, but it's it doesn't hang about.
No, I was looking at the runtime again as I watched it and thought, we're 20 minutes in and we're already going now. Yeah. It's a case of, one thing I did notice is right at the start, everyone tells him, don't go to Recall. It's a terrible place. Yeah. Okay, I won't. His wife says, no, don't go there. His friend says, don't go there. Someone got lobotomy. Okay. And then the next scene, he's going to recall. And it's not like he's just walked up. He goes, I've got an appointment. So I'm like, somewhere he's gone and booked it and then gone, yeah, I'm just going to ignore everybody and go anyway.
Yeah, that is very true. And I guess that's kind of that's the underlying urge that he has, or he's just stubborn.
I think it's the underlying pull of Mars and that he can't get it out of his mind and he's dreaming about it and it's just consuming him. I think that's why. But it was funny that I'm like, yeah, he's just going to ignore everyone.
But it's even like saying about little things like in science fiction that then come to pass. It's like when I saw this as like a 16-year-old, the idea of video adverts on the tube was kind of mind-blowing.
Yes.
And then now it's like, yeah, that's kind of old hat now. You know, it's because it's a thing that Verhoeven does quite well in other films. Anyway, he does use kind of media within media, if that makes sense. So there's quite a lot of ads in this that do things, but he's also got this kind of slightly heightened, stylized feeling in a way. It's not really very naturalist. It's kind of everything is ever so slightly heightened, but it's not so heightened that it becomes comedy or tongue in cheek. It's just on the edge of that. And even like Arnie does have some one-liners in here, but it's not the usual kind of. They're not. It's not overplayed. If that makes sense. It's just kind of he does say the odd thing, which is quite when he, but once he's kind of become the second version of himself, I suppose, in a way. But I'd forgotten how many twists and turns and how many kind of times you got. Different watching it now, of course. I haven't seen it before because you're going to know what's coming. But I do remember the first time I saw it, I was like, "Is that real? Is this real? Is that real? Are they lying to him? Is that the truth? Where is the reality in it?" Which is good. I mean, I haven't seen the remake. Have you seen the remake?
Sadly, I have.
Okay, what's it like?
Awful. Do you know what the stupidest thing in it is? Kate
Beckinsale?
No. How dare you, sir? How dare you? She's a charming lady. I won't hear anything. The main character is Quaid again, but it's played by Colin Farrell, who love him, fantastic.
Yeah, I think he's a great actor.
In Bruges and Certain Psychopath and so many other things. So he's like a manual worker, and him and his mate there again. He has a friend, and every day they get on this kind of lift and go to work. Here's where the problem with that lies: is they kind of get into this thing and they strap in like a roller coaster. Like the things come down over you.
Okay.
And there's like I don't know, 200 people or whatever strapped into this thing, and they go in the lift from America, I think it is, through the center of the earth to then go to work in Australia.
Oh, wow. Okay, I did not think that's where you were heading with that.
Exactly. I was like, what? They go on a lift through the center of the earth to work? Really?
What does... Hang on.
Yep.
Unless that was in the original story and they put it back in, what does that... Does it serve any narrative purpose whatsoever?
No.
What a very odd, strange decision.
It received generally negative reviews from critics. It had a lack of humour and a lack of emotional subtlety.
Yeah, so this Len, what's his name, isn't it? Is it Kate Beckinsale's husband or ex-husband, Len Wiseman, is it, that did the Underworld movies and stuff? And I think, did he do Priest? I found that his films, they just feel really dated because
They get in the gravity elevator, which goes through the Earth's core, which takes 17 minutes to traverse.
And then into Willy Wonka.
The Oompa-Loompas come out.
Yeah. I was torn on watching it because I knew I loved the original, but I know it is quite camp, isn't it, this film? And I thought, maybe a more kind of dark kind of take might be good. And I was like, I like Colin Farrell, but I thought, but I like the original. I don't need to see this story told again. And then I saw who was directing, and I thought, I haven't really enjoyed his other stuff. So I avoided it. But it sounds like a good thing. I now will never watch it, so that's good.
It's not worth your time. It really isn't. Of the two, I'd always watch the original because it's just a better film. They didn't stick to the core concept of it. They did go with what worked, and so it didn't work. Didn't work at all. But anyway, let's go back to the original and still the best, the 1990 with Arnie. I tell you what, though, this film has a higher body count than I remembered.
Yeah,
from watching it previous time.
Bloodier than I forget. Verhoeven does that. He likes people's limbs to come off, and he likes a lot of blood everywhere.
Yeah,
and there's a lot. Yeah, and again, compare it to Running Man, they are probably two of the bloodiest films or the goriest films I think of. Maybe Predator probably alongside them, but yeah, it is like when he takes people out, he takes them out, and it's not just like people bleed a lot.
Oh yeah. So there's that first fight where he's been to recall and he comes out and he's just kind of walking back and he meets his friend and those 4 blokes who grab him and he kills all 5 of them. He breaks their necks and shoots them. And I was like, I don't remember this being that bad.
No.
And it was like really hardcore. And then it's got that classic kind of gun sound that's all the way through the film, which is brilliant.
I think in a way, though, it's because it doesn't happen in films so much now. But I think if we watched this like in 1990, having watched a load of like films like 4 or 5 years before, even things like Roadhouse, pulling the guy's throat out, like those, I think things were I think then there were a lot more 18s, and now everything has to be a 15 because more people, because younger people are the people with money, so they tone stuff down. I know in things you can kill like androids and aliens, but as soon as you start killing humans, you're getting close to an 18 certificate. So I think, yeah, you don't tend to get this kind of visceral kind of violence, I don't suppose. Well, I guess you do. Like John Wick and stuff is very clinical, but this is what I like about this as well is he's not the best. He's not a perfect fighter. No. He does have skills, and he is obviously huge, but he's just using the skills he's got. But you also believe that when he's fighting someone, whether it's Sharon Stone or whether he's fighting Michael Ironside, you believe that you don't know who's going to win until it kind of plays out. Whereas I think a lot of the films now, you go, well, that's the hero. They're kind of perfect at what they do. They've got such skills. It's kind of the threat isn't there as much.
Yeah, because Sharon Stone's very competent. She takes him down at one point by herself. Yeah. And I was just kind of like, I'd forgotten there again how good she is at fighting in this film. It's obviously great choreography and also a cracking fight between her and Rachel Tickerton.
Yeah, it's a really good fight.
And it wasn't like... It was a really good fight between 2 actors, and it's just so good. And I thought, I'd forgotten about this as well.
Yeah.
And the pair of them really go against each other. She's got a knife and he's got a gun, and then she goes for a second gun and all that kind of stuff. And the fight scenes were really good. There was more of them than I remembered. Their body count was higher. I'd forgotten about the poor man on the escalator. Do you remember? So he uses a human shield like 5 times. I'm like, just some poor dude on the escalator.
But I like that. I like the fact that he kind of, which again is what makes you kind of query it, because once he's in that secret agent mode, which again could have been what Recall did to him, could be memories, could be something else. He is clinical. Like completely clinical. He's just doing. It's all an instinct. Like you say, you wouldn't normally have a construction worker isn't going to think, I know, I'll put this person up as a human shield and never mind if he gets killed. But he just clicks into it. But then every now and then it's a don't use the word subtle with Arnie very often, but I actually think it's quite a subtle performance because he is a little bit of like a bit lost in this kind of life. But it's really. I just think it's really clever. It is really clever. A lot of this film is very clever, and I think it's even more clever watching it again now. That the little touches and the little things that they do, I think are really well played out.
One of my favourite scenes is when the doctor comes into the room and says to him, "It's all a schizophrenic break. It's not real. This isn't. This is not real. I'm in that room beyond that wall, and here's your wife." And at first you're thinking, well, maybe, and it's how he works out that it's fake is so well done.
Yeah.
The actor is holding it together, everyone else is holding it together, and then that tiny trickle of sweat runs to the side of his face, and you're like, oh no. You know what's coming. We all know what's coming. But it was the first time I saw it as well. You watch it and you go, well, it does seem a bit, far-fetched that you've gone from a construction worker to a killing machine. Surely, hang on. It's all very convenient. And you're like,
I think as well, like, watching it again, I was like, oh, the dream at the start, that seems a bit heavy-handed. But actually, it's not at all, because it makes you query it. But at the same time, it makes you realise that there is something in his subconscious already. It's very... I think as a 16-year-old, I was just like, this is a cool film.
Yeah.
But now as a very much older person, I'm like, oh, do you know what? These are some really clever little storytelling touches that make you question everything all the way through. And I think Sharon Stone is much better in it than I realised at the time. The way she kind of switches between like the wife he needs to see. I'd forgotten her and Richter were a couple in it. Which,
yes.
Yeah, which I guess just gives him a bit more motivation. It's clever. It's really clever. She also really likes kicking him in the balls. She does that about
there was a few of those
times.
Yeah, and everyone does seem to like grabbing his crotch and say, "What have you been feeding this blondes?"
That's a great line, in fairness.
That and the other line, that was your wife. Yeah, what a bitch. That made me laugh.
Consider that a divorce is a classic as well.
Yeah. Okay. So there's that one-liner, and see you at the party, Richter.
Nice.
The other one.
Nice.
And I think there's another one, isn't there? There's another one.
The one where he says, the one I think I said before, where he says,
"You've got hell of a nerve showing your face around."
So basically, he said, "Look who's talking." Yeah. I'd forgotten how long they actually spend on Earth. In my memory, they went to Mars really quickly. But it's not, I know it's quite 50-50, but it's probably like 40% of the film is probably on Earth.
Yes.
I think. Yeah. Setting up. But again, it's kind of the kind of debate and switches throughout the story. I'd forgotten, despite having seen it loads of times. I was like, oh yeah, he's helping himself, or he's not. And then, like, he's not credited as being both characters, Quaid and is it Hauser?
Yep, Hauser.
But which I think is clever in itself as well, because I was just sat there, like, going, so he's really Hauser. He's pretended to be Quaid. Hauser really wanted him to do the things he's done, but for the bad purpose. But he's chosen a better version of himself to become, and almost cancelled out his whole history of himself as a person.
Yeah.
And again, as a 16-year-old, I was like, oh, yeah, okay. Now I was like, that is really clever. And I'm assuming that comes from the original source material. But it's actually, for a film that it has got a high body count, it's very stylized, and it's got Arnie in the lead, it's actually quite a deep thing, about who you are, what identity means, and can you kind of redeem yourself completely. It's probably a little bit more weight to this film than I gave it credit for in the past.
Yeah, it's that thing of you can have all the bells and whistles, but unless the story is solid, unless the foundation is real and there's an emotional connection, it doesn't mean anything. We've spoken about this before, spectacle versus story. Yeah. That film, Six Underground, with Ryan Reynolds. Love him. Fantastic. That film is all spectacle and 2% story. I thought it was an absolute bag of shit because it was just like popcorn and moving wallpaper, explosions and cars going very fast and pretty girls and blah, 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 and special effects. And then, but there's no emotion for me, no story for me. And I just thought, no, I came away now, with nothing. Whereas think about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar. Going back to when the first Transformers film, I actually quite liked.
It was okay, yeah.
Yeah. Then I watched the second one. And I was like, I don't know if I had some sort of lobotomy. What's happened? I don't understand. There doesn't seem to be any real... All those things, the story, the kind of emotion, the connection, had all kind of gone. Even the humour. And I was like, And I said to a few people, I'm like, I didn't like the second one. What? I didn't like the second. What do you mean you didn't like it? I didn't like it. Yeah, but it's giant robots fighting. I'm like, and? Okay. But I need more than that, and I haven't seen any. I said I watched Bumblebee, which actually I thought was really good. And if that had been the first one ever, I think the franchise would have been a much different thing. But I couldn't carry on with it because life is too short. No. Just if I want to watch explosions and stuff, I just find them on YouTube on a loop.
Yeah.
There has to be more to it, and I think this kind of film is that thing of like there's an emotional connection. You can watch it for that reason. You can just watch it because there's some really cool fighting and great action sequences. Or you can find something more in it and the meaning and stuff.
Having watched this many times and watched it again recently, I do want to now go back and read the original story and read some more works of Philip K. Dick. Maybe I'll get like a collected version of some of his short stories.
Well, so many of his so many of his stories have been made into films. I think it's like Adjustment Bureau. I think was from one of his stories. There's not Blade Runner. But there's loads. There's far more than I realised actually.
I'm trying to remember if A Scanner Darkly is his as well.
Yes, it is. Scanner Darkly is as well.
There you go. So they've done that one. There's just a lot of them. I mean, there were so many science fiction legends that we now regard them from that era that they're still being used. They're still mining their material because they were on the forefront.
And it's that thing. It's like it's high concept, yes, but it's also social commentary, and it's also got an emotional connection. And I think what I've realised watching this again is that's kind of my sweet spot with things. So I think about like RoboCop, Starship Troopers, the other Verhoeven films, Running Man I talked about before, Demolition Man we've talked about.
Yep.
And I didn't realise how much like I've pulled that kind of stuff into my writing. Tried to anyway. That kind of idea of like conspiracy theory, government stuff in the background, or social commentary woven into like high concept sci-fi. And it's a genre I don't think we get enough of anymore.
No, I think it just, I mean, probably the last one that I can think of that was really good, probably is something more recent, it was Enemy of the State.
Yeah.
The Will Smith one, because that was kind of government conspiracy. Is it real? Is it not? All about culture of being watched 24 hours and technology. And it's gone way up from when that film was made, but that was quite an interesting one at the time. I'm trying to think what else there might have been. I don't know. Can't think of anything more recent. There probably is. Probably I'm just not recalling it. But it's that mix of all the different things that come together that made this one right interesting. And because it was based on something that was interesting and different and unique. Created in the 60s as well. It's bonkers, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I'll tell you what made me laugh, though, watching it this time. When he gets back in the Johnny cab the next time and he goes, just drive. Where do you want to go? And he's like, just drive. Oh, no. And then right at the end, when the Johnny cab crashes, it explodes like there's a bomb strapped to the car. I was like, wow, what was in that car that made it go up so much?
I'd forgotten that Johnny Cab was actually on Earth. I'd forgotten about Benny I kind of knew there was something about Benny. And I was like, oh no, he's a mutant. Oh no, he does double cross them. It's kind of, but that's a good thing. I think if a film is well enough made, it doesn't matter how many times you see it. If you've got a long enough gap, you will forget the things because you've invested in it enough. I wasn't sitting there going, okay, and now he's going to double cross them. I just got, I'd forgotten the stuff with Cueto being on George's stomach. I completely forgotten that.
Oh wow, I had that because that freaked me out for years afterwards after seeing it. I'd forgotten when he first goes into the bar and he's talking to him and he goes to Melina's room. He's heading that way, and there's a character played by Debbie Lee Carrington. She called Thumbelina, and she says, "He looks quite a big guy. If you want any help, let me know." I was like, "Wow, okay." Very dodgy place that they're in. And the lady, of course, with the 3 attributes.
Indeed.
It's like, makes me wish I had 3 hands. You do pretty good yourself. I was like, I forgot.
And it is that, but it's that line, isn't it? It's funny, but it's dark at the same time. It never quite goes into like full on comedy. It's just, a funny situation, really. There's no character that isn't interesting. Even if it's someone just scanning you, or obviously there's the scene where he's disguised as the lady, which I definitely remembered very, very well.
Oh, yes.
2 weeks. 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
And that lady's quite a large actress. She's quite a tall, well-built woman.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I have to find her name. I think it might be Priscilla Allen, but I'm not sure. It could be her, but she passed away in 2008. It could have been her. But yes, when he's running around as himself, just in her dress, it's like, he's running quite well in high heels. Yeah, he's doing all right. There's iconic
moments. There's things like the tea towel on his head, the wet tea towel.
Yes.
There's the bit when somebody described to me what a COVID test was like. The first thing I said was, "Oh, it's like the bit in Total Recall where you got to put the bit up your nose."
Yep.
Because there are so many things I'd forgotten that are really in the cultural kind of lexicon from this. I don't think I've ever used the word lexicon before. Probably used it incorrectly. But it's that are from this movie. Like you say, the lady with the 3 breasts. There's all these bits that you just go, oh yeah, they're all in one film. They're all in this one movie.
It's like when you've forgotten, when people talk about John Carter of Mars and you think, oh, that just copied everything. You go, no, that came first. Other people have copied it. Yeah. And it's the same with this. There's a lot of things in the original Total Recall that other people have then imitated and copied and used for themselves.
Definitely. I like the kind of, it's almost like a little Bond Q moment of him finding the suitcase of contraptions that he'd given himself.
Yeah, the money, the tracker remover thing, the video,
the hologram replicator.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. That's so good. Yeah. And there they get the funny moments when he goes, "You think this is a real Quaid? It is."
Yeah. They used it. Yeah, they got this the amazing double bluff. You got it isn't him, then it is him, and then it isn't her, and you're like, it's constantly keeping you on your toes as the audience and as the people that they're kind of battling against. Which I'd forgotten. I'd forgotten how clever so much of this film is for a film that in many ways is people chasing people around. Mm-hmm. If you boil it down, but actually some of those moments are just, like Hagen's got this plan. He doesn't want Richter to kill him, and you never quite know. You're like, oh, but why? But then he's obviously killed his girlfriend. You're like, oh, he wants to kill him, but then it's because his house is like, yeah, but why is he so loyal to housing? It's because that is one big double cross in itself. So I love the fact then that the Quaid version of him doesn't go along with it. He pushes back against. I guess it's a bit like a story of an undercover cop who then falls in love with the life that he's been undercover, but much cleverer than that, because that's essentially what happens in a way. But it happens in such a just to come up with the idea for this original story and then to adapt it so well is quite a feat. Which again, as a teenager, I was just like, this is cool. It's in space, and now I'm just like, it's really like they don't really put a foot wrong. It's just every scene does something it needs to, and every character kind of serves a purpose, really.
The first time I watched it, I didn't get the twist. I watched it and I kind of went, oh, right. And then I thought, hang on, so who's he? I didn't get it. It was only the second time I watched it, probably a few years later, I thought, okay, he's chosen to stay as Quaid. I was too young, I think, the first time I saw it. It didn't click. But, he's made that conscious decision to be Quaid and to help the people. Because that's the other thing. Yeah. They're turning off the air. They're saying if you don't help, we'll turn off the air. And so everyone's, suffocating and dying. And it's not until he turns on the machine that it saves everybody's life. I just some things you pick up on the first viewing, second viewing, and others you don't. You just don't get them until much later.
I think as well, like back at the time, I thought for a split moment that they were going to link all Arnie's films together, and that the hand shape of the aliens for the reactor was actually the Predator hand.
Ah, clever. Yeah.
But I don't think it was. I can't imagine. Predators really good at hunting people. Not convinced they're into kind of like reactors and
terraforming. Not really their cup of tea.
No, terraforming. That's the word I was for. I was about to say air conditioning. It's slightly more involved than that. Yeah, hello. Can you come round? Oh, yeah. You do air conditioning? Yeah, brilliant. No, this is terraforming, mate. It's a bit advanced for me.
Bit more developed than that. Yeah. Oh, right. Sorry. Yeah. I don't think they're quite in the terraforming business. More the hunting and killing. Yeah. They come in the summer when it's warm and the years when it's very hot. Yeah. I'm still waiting for them to do another sequel that's actually really good to that. To the original. Predator. Yeah. They keep talking about it. But
I don't think it'll happen now, because if Shane Black can't pull it off, I don't think anybody can.
I still haven't seen the new one.
You're not missing a lot. I saw it on. It was very. I went into that as like, forget every other film this year. Predator is one of my favorite films of all time. Shane Black is my favorite writer of all time. This is going to be, and it almost feels like a parody of the first film to me.
I might actually do a 5-minute review on it then at some point. And
it's worth. I went to see it with Dan in the cinema, and we just left and just didn't speak for a while, just both sad.
Wow. You're so sad.
We didn't speak. Yeah.
Just didn't speak.
How sad we were.
Harsh.
Which is very different. The only other time I've come out of a film and none of us spoke was after 7, but that was because we were so shocked that we didn't speak, because we were kind of taking that on board. This was more taking on board how disappointed we were. Yeah, that's probably the most kind of hyped I've been for something, which is why I usually don't buy into hype, but I bought into it being something I still would like to see, but everyone in it's too old. But maybe you'd have to just cast it younger, which wouldn't be really a Predator film, I guess, in the way I'd love to see just what the crew were like as mercenaries dealing with normal shit.
Yeah.
Just like the reverse Expendables, I suppose. The kind of the Predator, I guess you'd call it.
Oh, God.
If you can edit that bit out if you like.
Nope.
Damn, this is what, yeah.
So this film came in 1990. I was going to say, talk about Arnie's kind of back catalogue. I'm trying to look at what came around this time. So this was after Running Man and Predator, and after Red Heat.
Yeah.
But he'd also done Twins before this.
Wow, okay.
In 88, which is interesting because I thought he'd stuck with the more serious stuff before he jumped to doing comedy. But it was after. So hang on. Comes in a really peculiar time. So he's done Raw Deal, Predator, Running Man, Red Heat, and then he jumps to Twins. Then he goes back to Total Recall. Then he does Kindergarten Cop.
Okay.
And then the next year is Terminator 2.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And you're like, what? So that kind of 5-year period, 6-year period, he's making fun.
And he did the flip-flopping between comedy and straight-out action. And then Sly tried to do the same to much lesser results. If you think the comedy career that Sly Stallone has had is kind of Stop My Mum Will Shoot, is it Oscar? They did films that like people did not like. But I love Twins. I rewatched it the other day. I love Kindergarten Cop. There's something about Arnie that is just very funny, but he can also play stuff completely straight. I actually think he's a very underrated actor, not just a large Austrian man.
Yes. But, from an early run, from about 84 onwards, he had, hit after hit after hit, from Conan to Terminator to Commando.
And when you go back and watch them, they're all really I'm not kind of ragging on Stallone. I think Stallone's best work is amazing, but he also has even like Tango and Cash. Rewatching that, we did that before, and I don't think it was anywhere near as good as I remember. Cobra rewatched wasn't as good as I remember, and I think in a way the reason he's gone back to Rocky and Rambo stuff is because they're the ones that really worked. I still will always say The Expendables is the biggest missed opportunity possibly in cinema history. That could have been the film in my head.
Yep.
That would have been with that cast is amazing, but it wasn't. Though I don't think those films were great considering who they brought back together for them. Yeah. But but Arnie, maybe slightly less so since he's come back post being a politician. But in his like 80s, 90s heyday, it was just great film after great film after great film after great film, and all different in their own way.
Yeah.
Which. And because people go, "Oh, The Rock is the new Arnie," and yeah, in some ways he is because he's got that. He can do comedy, he can do more straight out action, but he also is variations on one character, really, without being rude. I'm not saying he can't act, but they are. In some ways, he's playing a version of himself. But I don't think Arnie does that. I think a lot of people used to do that. When people doing impressions of him and stuff, say, "Oh yeah, he's just the same in every film." He's really not. The character in Twins, the character in Kindergarten Cop. And the people running around in these movies, even things like True Lies, are all very different from each other.
Yes, I agree.
The fact he is so large and recognisable and has an accent, on the surface, could make people go, "Oh yeah, it's kind of the same." But I think he's a very underrated actor.
Yeah. He uses that against people. I think their expectations of him as one thing, and then he does something else completely different. I think that's fair. So we've talked about the original, and obviously you've not seen the remake, and I suggest you don't because it was awful, much like the RoboCop remake.
I haven't seen that either. See, to me, it's like there has been talk of a Starship Troopers remake as well. Then you completely redone all the Verhoeven stuff, but. I don't know. I don't see why these. It's not like I can understand people maybe not watching something that's in black and white, or maybe not watching something when no one talks. Yeah. But I can't see the point of a film that. Yeah, okay. Some of the effects haven't held up that well because it's 30 years old. But
yes.
But it doesn't really matter.
No.
It doesn't really matter.
No, that's not the focus of the film. That's the difference. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's the heart and the story and the characters and a fantastic script versus, the special effects are a bit wonky. Redo it so the special effects are better. Like, well, if that's the focus of the film, then you've just wasted millions of dollars and months of work. What was the point? Don't bother. You're just proven that you haven't understood the story if the only thing you're worried about is the special effects.
Yeah, and I do wonder if there's an element with some of these remakes where they go, oh, do you know what? This is how we get an audience. The people who've seen the original are going to see this to see if it's any good. If they don't like it, they've still paid for a ticket. And then you've got new people who've heard of the old one and haven't seen it, so watch the new one. Or who've seen the old one, thought it was a bit old, so going to watch the new one. And it just feels like a marketing thing, really.
Yeah.
Unless, obviously things like The Thing was a remake, and I think and Ocean's 11 is a really good remake. But because they took the source material in a different way, or they improved on something that actually was kind of all right. Whereas when you're taking these films, they're actually really, really, like Total Recall, RoboCop, very, very strong sci-fi action movies. Very strong, iconic. So why would you do it? It's like, I don't know. It's like Taylor Swift covering the Beatles. Do you know what I mean? What's the point?
Yeah. Anyway. Right. I think we've talked about this film enough. Let's do some scores.
Get your ass to Mars. Enough with the yakety yak. What is your score?
Pete, do you want to go first then?
Okay. So, it's a very clever sci-fi high concept. It's virtually non-stop on the action front. It pits Arnie against Michael Ironside, so it gives him somebody who's a good actor to lean off against, and also someone who I think is a match for him in terms of a villain. It plays to Arnie's strengths in lots of ways. It's got a really brilliant cast, as we said. All these double and triple crosses. You never quite know where you stand. I probably like it more now than I did when I first saw it, if that makes sense. I think probably because it's sat with me better when I'm a bit older, and the kind of slightly campy, heightened elements don't bother me in the way they maybe did when I was younger. It's up there, really. I think this kind of sci-fi action kind of social commentary genre is a very interesting place. I don't know why I'm not going to give it. I'm going to give it 4 bags, but I can't give you a reason why it's not 5. But I'm still going to give it 4.
Fair enough.
Do you know what I mean? I can't really explain myself there because I've just said all great things about it, and it's a really good film. I'd happily watch it again. But it's a very strong 4. Let's go there.
Okay. It's been a while since I'd watched it, so it was nice to come back to it. There's little bits and pieces here that I'd forgotten. I'd forgotten how bloody it was and how violent some of it. Some great fight scenes between Arnie and people, between the 2 female leads. The treatment of women in this film is a lot better than we'd seen around the period from other films. They actually have something to do. They have agency. They have complicated roles and complicated characters because both of them are playing different people as well. Just as Arnie's playing Quaid and Hauser, Melina and Laurie are both playing 2 very different people as well. So there's stuff there for them to do. They're not just pretty wallpaper on there to support the main actor. Great villain always, and Michael Ironside. Always nice to see him, and Ronnie Cox as well. I love seeing him in films. And it's the little touches, as you say, like on the subway, noticing moving things and you think, oh, wow, that's really cool at the time. And now you go, well, yeah, that's just what we have today. So it's taken the original story and they've added things to it that have then become part of like technology that we take for granted today. Special effects were a bit hokey in places, but there again, it was 1990, so that didn't bother me either. I don't know. I'm going to give it 4 as well. I think there are some bits that could have been improved. I think the script could have been tightened here and there. The social commentary stuff was good. The kind of slightly tongue-in-cheek aspect of it. Maybe that's it. Maybe I'm wanting something that's a bit more straight now that I'm a bit older. But it's still a brilliant film and it's still worth your time 30 years on from when it came out.
Yeah, no, I would agree with all of that.
Okay, so have you seen Total Recall from 1919? If not, why not? Go out and watch it now. Do not go and watch the remake, even if you think, oh, it can't be that bad. A lift that goes through the centre of the earth to go to work. That's all I need to say. It's that bad. Let us know what you think of Total Recall. Get in touch with us in all the usual ways. We're on email. Join the Facebook group. Come and talk to us there. Don't forget to join our YouTube channel and like and subscribe to that. We have weekly episodes and 5-minute reviews going out every week together with our longer episodes. And if you want to support the show, we're also on Ko-fi, so you can buy us a coffee there. Right. That's it for this episode.
I love the fact you do that bit because it goes on for ages and I don't have to say it.
All right, Pete, wrap us up.
Thank you very much for listening, if indeed you still are.
Good night.
You have been listening to Bags of Action. No bullshit. You'd better stick around for the next episode, because if you're lying, I'll be back.